Hey everyone! The word Rococo derives from the French word rocaille, meaning rockwork or shell. It is a combination of the words rocaille and barocco. As a reminder, that means irregular pearl. The style is a later, more delicate extension of the Baroque style. In France, the period is associated with Louis XV and is generally used in France, South Germany, and Austria to describe work of the 18th century. The development of Rococo style overlaps the severely restrained design referred to as neoclassical. The feminine look of Rococo style suggests that the age was dominated by the taste and social initiative of women. For example, Louis XV was known to be a fairly weak leader and easily influenced by his favorites, also known as mistresses. Madame Pompadour in France, Maria Theresa in Austria, as well as Elizabeth and Catherine in Russia, held some of the highest positions in Europe. Rococo ornamentation is inspired by shells. Sometimes it looks like frilly carving. Other times it looks like forms of flowing water or eroded rock. For the first time since the Middle Ages, antiquity was not the main source of inspiration for the form. Rococo is anti-classicism. Instead, the style's creative forms have no formal rules. The style was most prevalent in the decorative arts, painting, sculpture, interiors, and fashion. The Rococo style was a reaction to the stiff formality of Baroque style. It is characterized by asymmetry, where one half of the design does not match the other half, natural motifs, particularly inspired by shells and flowing water, romance, fantasy, and elegance, a lighter, more feminine scale, delicate colors, gold, silver, and pastel shades. This Baroque-style church has a distinctly Rococo interior. The styles are often found to be mixed, as Rococo style was added to Baroque buildings. Notice the dominant Rococo colors, white, gold, and pinks, and the painted ceiling with a lavish plaster ornamentation that really looks like cake frosting. In secular design, which means non-religious design, French nobility were abandoning palatial living for the pleasures of town life. Versailles, for example, was virtually uninhabited after 1715. The hotels, or townhouses, of Paris soon became the entry point for this new, softer Rococo style, where comfort became a major issue in the discreet, private living accommodations enjoyed by the elite. This interior, by Gabriel Germain Beaufrand, was designed in a remodel of the Hôtel des Savoies in Paris. His remodeling of the hotel is considered one of the best Rococo interiors. The walls and ceilings were outfitted with white panels and a pale blue, flattish domed ceiling. There are gilded cupids frolicking in the ceiling detail, evidencing the romanticism in Rococo design. Hôtel de Rochegude in Avignon is a mansion designed by a former royal building project architect and sculptor who spreads the decorative tradition of Versailles to Avignon. There is also a rise in aristocracy retreating to pastoral living, or country retreats. The elaborate hunting lodge, called Amalienburg, in the grounds of Nymphenburg Palace in Germany, is an example of these smaller royal projects. The Rococo exterior was often simple or even plain, but the exuberance took over in the interior. The interior of this hunting lodge exhibits the Rococo style in their version of a hall of mirrors. François Cuvier was a key figure in carrying the Rococo style eastward from France. He used silver and azure blue plaster ornamentation to frame the windows and mirror panels. All of the Rococo ornamentation is in stucco, and there is little painting. The angles of the mirrors as they progress around the pentagonal room creates sort of this repeating reflection described as almost a kaleidoscope effect. The light of candles of the large central chandelier would have been endlessly repeated in the mirrors. It was very typical of Rococo interiors to use unusual room shapes and alcoves, which contributed to the idea of more discreet and private living accommodations. These are other spaces at Amalienburg at Nymphenburg Palace. Marie Antoinette was very well known for her tendency towards retreat and renouncing the pomp and ostentation of Versailles. She was responsible for the building of the Petit Trianon on the garden grounds of Versailles, where she spent the majority of her time as queen. The Petit Trianon is where she famously abandoned formal court dresses for less constricting, flowy dresses. I like to say she was sort of like the original hippie reading Rousseau in her country commune. Rousseau's writings are famous for his back to nature philosophy. She also had a collection of books in her library from the Incas of Peru and their culture's worship of the sun. The Petit Trianon may be regarded as the peak expression of French Rococo design, while also beginning to turn towards neoclassicism. Here again, we see Rococo design starting to turn towards neoclassicism, so we'll discuss this further in the section on neoclassicism. In Rococo furnishings, we see an interest in more relaxed, comfortable living. We also see special details for women, such as chair arms that are set back and curved outward to accommodate large dresses when sitting. We see more slender, delicate S-curves on the legs of furniture in Rococo style, which is called a cabriole leg. If you take a look closely at this chair, you'll notice the rock-eye motifs on the carved crest and apron of the chair that define the Rococo style. A fauteuil is a style of chair with open arms and a detached back. A drop-in seat and back panel made it so the upholstery could be changed according to the season and did not have to be nailed into a wooden frame. A bergère-style chair, on the other hand, is the more informal chair. The bergère is a larger armchair with fully enclosed backs and arms. The chair has a separate, loose seat cushion. Bergère literally means farmer's wife. However, this type of chair would have been way out of the price range for most farmers. It refers more to the size and the sort of relaxed nature that you could sit in it. Upholstered daybeds and chaise lounges also became fashionable. It was fitted with a long, loose seat cushion and extra back cushions and played highly into the more relaxed nature of this time. The voyeuse chair style is a variation of the bergère chair. It is completely upholstered, has short arms, and a detachable cushion. But the main feature is the back, which has an upholstered shelf, so someone watching a game in progress at a card table could be standing behind you and lean comfortably without disturbing the person sitting in the chair. Card playing was an absolute mania during Louis XV's reign. The confidant displays how a piece of furniture was a player in social life. A large seating unit like this was typically placed against a wall or an alcove. The confidant encourages you to sit close to someone else, but not touch. Although they faced in different directions, it supported gossiping and whispering to one another. Here we see a more common sofa with removable cushions to change fabrics with the season. Notice the detail of the asymmetrical shells on the frame in particular that make it Rococo style. The drop leaf and roll top desks were developed in response to a popular pastime of letter writing in the Rococo period. This roll top example by Du Roy required 9 years to complete. It's considered to be the greatest achievement in cabinet making of all time. Here's another example of a mechanical desk with a drop leaf style. And a closer detail of another example that you can see what they're referring to more as the mechanics, Basically, they're just saying that it has movable parts. This piece of furniture is called a commode. It has side doors and a pull-out writing tablet. It's painted in a pastel green and covered with bouquets and garlands of flowers. Very feminine. A console table leaning up against a wall was sort of the epitome of a Rococo furniture vignette. The ensemble typically consisted of a mirror hung in the center of an architectural panel, a console table placed beneath it, and candles at its side. A console looks as if it's unstable. A console is really half of a table, but when reflected in the mirror, appears to be a full table. Consoles were for display only. There's no storage to contain anything. There are curves everywhere, gilded wood, and this one has a decorative stone top. Here again, we see the long, thin cabriole legs of the Rococo style in a tea table, which is another popular kind of furniture form. Chinoiserie became very popular and refers to Western imitations of Chinese art. The pieces were often standard European shapes, such as consoles and commodes, but decorated with Chinese motifs. William Chambers published a manual called Designs for Chinese Buildings, Furniture, and Dress in 1757 to assist those interested in chinoiserie. Instead of wooden marquetry, panels of Chinese or Japanese lacquer could be used as veneer. The 18th century merchants and furniture dealers played an important role as decorators, creators of new fashions, and middlemen between craftsmen and clients. They would supply the cabinet makers with these lacquer panels. They were often cut from old-fashioned chests or cabinets that had been imported from the Far East during the previous century. Here's an example of a lacquer panel from the Hôtel du Châtelet in Paris. And here is a drop-leaf writing desk belonging to Madame Pompadour that is done in the chinoiserie style. A pair of corner cupboards circa 1750, also done as chinoiserie. And a wall clock with Chinese figures. In the 18th century, a new group of professionals called ornamentistes replaced architects, merchants, and cabinet makers in conceiving designs for decorative objects, furniture, and interiors. With the ornamentalists' help, clients and artisans were better able to choose and design decor. You could say this person was a bit of an interior decorator. Juste Aurel Meissonier was the most inventive French ornamentalist of the reign of Louis XV. He was a multifaceted artist, a metal engraver, chaser, silversmith, sculptor, draftsman, decorator, painter, and architect. And from 1726 onward, he occupied the prestigious post of designer of the king's chamber and cabinet. Essentially, a creator of forms. The extraordinary world he designed on paper was dominated by asymmetry, and his innovative ideas contributed to the triumph of Rococo in 1730s Paris. His designs, disseminated in the forms of engravings, were collected in a book published under the title The Work of Meissonier. They were realized by other artists under his strict supervision. Meissonier's engravings, like his candlestick, were of great importance in spreading the Rococo style throughout the rest of Europe. And lastly, the art of silhouette cutting originated in Europe in the early 1700s. Prior to the French Revolution, silhouette artists were hired as an amusement for the royal class, kind of like artists drawing caricatures at a fair. The featured artist would attend the many extravagant balls and cut out the distinguished profiles of the lords and ladies, capturing the latest fashions and elaborate wigs. While the aristocrats were having their silhouettes cut out and eating like kings, most of Europe was starving, especially in France. In the 1760s, the finance minister of France, named Etienne de Silhouette, had crippled the French people with his merciless tax policies. Oblivious to his people's plight, Etienne was much more interested in his hobby of cutting out paper profiles, the latest fad. Etienne de Silhouette was so despised by the people of France that in protest, the peasants wore only black to mimic his black paper cutouts. The saying went all over France: "We are dressing a la silhouette. We are shadows, too poor to wear color. We are silhouettes." Today, the black profile cutouts are called silhouettes because of him. Thanks for following along. See you soon.